So I have 15 minutes before work, so I'm going to keep this short. Just doing this for my study on John. If you're interested in the history leading up to, I guess, two major points. Where did legalism come from? Because if we think about the exiles, going into captivity, it's all because they didn't keep Torah. So now all of a sudden we have this legalistic approach where we not only are we keeping Torah, but we've built up rules around it. So we're going to explain maybe an idea where that came from, looking at the history, and then just to set up understanding who Herod the Great is and who Herod Antipas is, his son, and their regions of control. Just give us a tiny bit of context for going into John as far as the build up here. So not much biblical history here because we have this intertestamental period where it's kind of like the dark ages of the Bible, but there's actually a lot of stuff going on here, right? Alexander the Great and the rise of Rome. Maccabees and Josephus is where we get this information for this, but there's also a lot of other historians who talk about this. And even the New Testament clues us into a few things. So, the Hasmonean kingdom started out from essentially the story of Hanukkah, which is coming up really shortly, so this actually fits well with that. So happy Hanukkah, everyone. You had Matthias Maccabee, and I'm not going to get into this because everyone really knows the Hanukkah story, but if you know it, just a quick summary is the revolt against the Greek occupation. So you had the Seleucids, which were 1/4 of the kingdom of Alexander's after he split it. So they came in and they were just pretty much genocide against anyone who kept Torah. So after the revolts and Judah Maccabee and his brothers kind of reclaiming the land, reclaiming the temple, and rededicating it, story of Hanukkah, we have kind of this opposite approach. So anyone, because it is really bad before, like if you were circumcised, they would kill the child, make the mother carry it around on her neck. The whole families would watch, everyone be tortured and killed, trying to get them to eat pork or, adopt, Hellenistic lifestyle. So it was the other way. So Modin actually is here where Matthias was. So when he started the revolt, led it back to Jerusalem, reclaimed the land slowly, and anyone who was a Jew who had converted to the Greek thinking was oppressed and killed, kind of the opposite of the Greek occupation. Now is like kind of Torah terrorist, literally. And maybe there's some justification for that. So these were Levites, and we know Levites were very passionate people. We have the story of, his name, Phineas or whatever, stabbing the Midianite princess and the Judah, whatever, prince, and God's wrath subsiding. The problem is they kind of kept the kingship and they kept the high priesthood. We know the scepter always belonged to Judah, so there's some debate on whether that was okay since it's supposed to be the line of Zadok. And that kind of led into this Hasmonean dynasty, also known as the Holy Kings. So really enforcing Torah, good things, but it kind of, we can see how it leads to this legalistic type of thinking where it's less about, a relationship with God now and more about you better do this because or we're going to kill you. And it's the same kind of trouble we get into as Christians. Like you better believe in God or you're going to hell. It's that same kind of scare tactic that we use instead of like really wanting a relationship, obeying the rules because we have a love relationship with God, and really understanding that Torah is a law of love and not a law of legalism. So how does Herod the Great fit into this kingdom? So Herod actually marries in, let's see, here's Herod's kingdom. So he really expands this, right? He expands a lot of, and reclaims a lot of what would have been the promised land. He even invades into the Arab territories, which comes back to play in 70 AD with Titus's army was actually a lot of Arab conscripts, and they're the ones that destroyed the temple because they were mad because they didn't like Herod because he waged a lot of war against them and reclaimed a lot of land from them. And even Herod Antipas was supposed to be, he already was married to an Arab princess at one point. I think Nabatean was the word, which would have been interesting. We'll get to that because it goes into John the Baptist. Again, I don't want to go too long here, but he ended up marrying his niece, Herodias, and well, John the Baptist didn't like that because it's against Torah, and I think he also stole his brother's wife. So it was like a double no-no. All right, so let's see. What was I talking about? Herod the Great. So Herod the Great married Hasmonean princess, so a Levitical princess. And he wasn't really elected king. He went to Rome, and since he had that marriage, he was able to plead for the kingdom to be given to him. So it was never really that they elected him as king. And he was from Idumea. He was an Edomite, half Jew, half Edomite. Which is another interesting. Lots of conspiracy theorists and rabbit holes on Esau, the first created the line of Edom, kind of reclaiming his birthright here. Very interesting. Becoming the king, getting the land back, getting the kingship that he always wanted. He sold to he sold to Jacob, who later became Israel. But we won't go into that. But definitely, whole novels could be written on such topics. Very interesting. A lot of cool stuff here. So here's so a tetrarch is a four, split into four. So that's what we're seeing at most of the gospels here. Is when Yeshua is traveling around, he's going from different places controlled by different people. And we see with Pontius Pilate that he kind of sends Yeshua to Herod Antipas and then back. It's because it's just kind of this play on people who contain different lands. So we're going to have some pictures here. But Herod the Great died, and the kingdom was split. Herod the Great wasn't a great guy. A lot of people, I'm sure, thought he was very Messiah-like, but near the end of his life, he killed 3 of his sons, and we don't see the slaughter of the innocents in Josephus's account, but we do see that he gets a lot of prominent Jews and religious leaders, puts them in a Colosseum, and because he knows that there was going to be rejoicing at his death, and he wanted mourning at his death, so he was going to kill all these Jews. Luckily, it was stopped, but there's a lot of stuff going on that the slaughter of the innocents at Bethlehem might have gone unnoticed. And if you really think about it, Bethlehem wasn't probably as big as we think it was. Some count the number like 200 or 2,000. Might have been 50. Might have been 10. It was a really small town there. They probably had a lot of people at the time because it was probably a feast day, so a lot of people were coming in when Joseph and Mary were traveling for probably one of the feast days, and everyone has debates on that. Might have been Sukkot because that's one of the pilgrim feast days, and makes sense that that'd be the time when you do a census. But we're not getting into that one either. So here's some of the land, and when we first open up the book of John, he's east, right? He's east of the Jordan River. So that's right down here in the middle. So he would have been in Herod Antipas's land. And I think this is a fortress, how do we say that, Machaerus, where he is killed. So he's killed for kind of like, because he was pretty popular, and even Herod liked John. It was thought that he liked to go listen to him preach, and he was afraid there'd be revolt if he killed him, but he killed him for his new wife Herodias, who was his Herod II's wife, who he stole, and he divorced his Nabatean wife, who was an Arab princess. That leads to war later on, after Yeshua's death, around 37. And he pleads to Rome, but then eventually he gets exiled around 39 AD into Gaul, where he dies. Herodias goes with him. Not really important, but just interesting that you get what you deserve. Here's the long chart if you want to look at it. Like I said, Herod the Great killed a few of his sons because they thought they were trying to kill him, and there's probably some truth to that. Read Josephus if you're interested in that. Otherwise, I think I kept that under 10 minutes. So there we go. Nice and short, just a little background information on what's going on. sure where I was going there. What's wrong with Nazareth? I don't know. It's really close to Samaria. Maybe that's what I was pointing out. Maybe that's a whole other video, is what's wrong with Samaria, and that goes into Josephus too, and how during the Greek occupation, the Jews living there, or you could say, people of Israel who had returned to the land from the northern kingdom, because that's essentially in the northern kingdom, when Antiochus Epiphanes was occupying the land, they're just like, we're Arabs, and we'll rename our temple Mount Gerizim to Jupiter Hellenus. So that's why they were not liked, those living in that land, even though they later became under the kingdom, under the Hasmonean rule, is they were looked down upon as traitors to the faith, and more of a mixed blood. There probably is some truth that they are Arab, but probably a mix of Israelite as well, and those who had returned from the northern kingdom. And maybe that's where the term Jew comes from, is just Judea. This land became Judea, and that's where many of the Jews came because they wanted to be near Jerusalem, and a lot of exiles returning from the northern kingdom of Assyrian captivity just took on the identity of Jews, and they kind of had to. But Samaritans remained, and they still remain today, in the belief that this is Shechem, where Abraham had his sacrifice, or his covenant with God, and Mount Ebal, Gerizim, and the altars there was where the true temple lies, and not Jerusalem. And there's that debate on that. It's not a good debate. I don't think they really have a case. Just a lot of very interesting things did happen at Shechem, for sure. So Nazareth being so close, and that's why I say, what prophet comes from Nazareth is supposed to come from Bethlehem, because that's actually in the text. But also, these were a people that kind of had betrayed the faith. Like I said, they were part of the northern kingdom, so they had all bad kings, went into exile, didn't stand strong during the Greek occupation, and that's why they're kind of looked down upon. That's interesting that the Messiah would decide to come from Nazareth, even though he was Jewish. Rabbit trail. Sorry, had to do it. Thanks, guys. Take care.